January 30th, 1948, 6 p.m. The father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, had just finished his evening prayers when a lone gunman stepped out and shot him in the chest. At the same time, a few hundred miles from Delhi, Ram Krishna Bajaj was about to leave his sugar mill when he heard this devastating news. 6 years earlier, he had lost his father, Jamnalal Bajaj, who was Gandhiji's adopted son. Ram Krishna immediately left for Delhi to pay his last respects to Bapuji, the man who had influenced the legacy of his family for years. Jamnalal Bajaj was adopted as a grandson by Seth Bachraj, a rich Rajasthani merchant of Wardha. When he came of age, Jamnalal got involved in the family business of cotton trading and banking, and in 1926 founded what would later become the Bajaj Group of Industries.
ये ज़मीं ये आसमां, ये ज़मीं ये आसमां, हमारा कल हमारा आज, हमारा कल हमारा आज, बुलंद भारत की बुलंद तस्वीर, हमारा बजाज, हमारा बजाज, हमारा बजाज.
Jamnalal ji was succeeded by his eldest son, Ram Krishna Bajaj's elder brother, Kamal Nayan, in 1942. Kamal Nayan was just 27 years old. He consolidated and diversified the Bajaj Group, branching into cement, Ayurvedic medicines, electrical equipment and appliances, and of course, scooters. Kamal Nayan Bajaj's elder son, Rahul, took charge in 1965. Under his leadership, turnover of the group went up from rupees 7 crore to rupees 4,600 crore, and the group found acceptance globally. Today, Rahul Bajaj is one of India's most distinguished business leaders and is internationally respected for his business acumen and entrepreneurial spirit. In today's episode of Legends and Legacies, we have with us Sulajja Firodia Motwani, scion of yet another eminent business family, in conversation with corporate legend Mr. Rahul Bajaj.
Good evening, Mr. Bajaj, and welcome to Legends and Legacies. It's very nice to have you on the show.
Good evening, Sulajja. Nice to be on the show.
From late Sri Jamnalal ji Bajaj to now Rajiv and Sanjeev, 4 generations of what really can be called a fairy tale journey for Bajaj Auto. It's been a journey of success, and today Bajaj Auto is one of not only most successful business houses, but I would say legendary institution and a crown jewel of India Inc. We're really hoping to know a lot more about this whole journey from you. I also feel that along the way, there must have been many values, many conventions that became written or unwritten rules, that became the guiding principles with which this journey was shaped. And we hope that we get some insights from you on how these principles have guided the journey of Bajaj Auto and made it the legend that it is. So we're really hoping to get to know a lot more about the company from you.
Thank you very much for your very, very kind words.
Well, let's start all the way back, the early days. Your grandfather, Mr. Jamnalal ji Bajaj, was a legend. He was also very close to Bapuji, Gandhiji, and was highly influenced by the Gandhian values. Tell us a little bit more about this genesis of Bajaj family, its entry into business, and how the Gandhian values have shaped the origins of Bajaj Auto.
I think it's a very valid question, because I think without at all implying good or bad, but not at all, but compared to, let's say, the top 100 or top 50 industrial houses in India, in this one respect, the Bajaj Group is unique. I repeat, I'm not saying good or bad, but unique. And that's because of Jamnalal ji and Jamnalal ji alone. The Bajaj Group was started by his grandfather, who really became his father, Bachraj. That's why we have companies like Bachraj and Company, Bachraj Trading, etc. So there was business before that. In those times, I'm talking of the early 1900s, the business was cotton ginning, cotton pressing, trading, essentially money lending, basically that. There was no industry as such. But because of Jamnalalji, who was born in 1889, incidentally the same year of birth as Jawaharlalji, and that's why they were like brothers. My name has been given to me, Rahul, by, that's a separate story, by Jawaharlalji, who was very fond of my mother. But last maybe 15 years of his life, Jamnalalji didn't do any business. There's no legacy of growth or business or profit or loss. On that there is only one legacy: integrity and ethics, and nothing else, which we cannot be Jamnalalji, definitely not. But that's there in our genes, in our DNAs, and that is something which if we can't add to, everybody, Kamalyanji, Ramkrishnaji, my chacha, and we five, we call ourselves five brothers, though we are brothers and cousins, we have tried to see that we don't at least reduce that or hurt it in any way if we can't embellish it or add to that. And from that angle, because Jamnalalji was, he got himself adopted by Gandhiji.
He was called his fifth son, I believe.
He was his fifth son. And what some people do not know now is, after Gandhiji returned from South Africa to India, he settled down in his ashram called Sabarmati in Gujarat. Actually, today it's in Ahmedabad. That time it was on the outskirts of Ahmedabad. How did he shift to Wardha? Sevagram, which was our property.
Your family is from Wardha.
Jamnalalji brought him there.
Are some of those values still in the nerve system of Bajaj family?
Let's be very clear. There is no Jamnalalji in the family, and I don't think there is no Jamnalalji in India anywhere. Not only in business family, anywhere. At least not that we know of. Somebody may be in Kailash or Himalayas, but not in public life. Politics, bureaucracy, business, anywhere. You don't have a Jamnalalji. You can't have it. But that's a long story by itself. You can write a whole book on that.
Tell us a little bit more about your father, Kamalyanji Bajaj.
Kamalyanji was very different from Jamnalalji and very different from me. Here was a very strong personality, very different from Jamnalalji. Jamnalalji could be very strong, but in a very different way. He would be strong in the sense he would not succumb to any wrong request, whether from the British government or anybody else, but very, very soft-spoken. Whereas Kamalyanji was very strong, to some extent, like me, calling a spade, which annoyed a lot of people, and especially in the field of politics, because he was a 3-term member of the Lok Sabha from Wardha. Never looked after any day-to-day business, unlike us, who did nothing but that most of our lives, but was not only a person who's concerned with the country's welfare, like his father, and did a lot from being party to the states, being involved, being part of India in the early 50s. Vallabhbhai Patel, Nehru took some help from him.
Also following in the footsteps of his illustrious grandfather Jamnalalji is Madhur Bajaj, Ramkrishnaji's second son and vice chairman of Bajaj Auto.
My grandmother, Janki Devi ji, used to tell us a lot of stories, and some of those examples have impacted me a lot in my own life. During those times, and our family business at that time, I'm talking 100 years ago, was cotton ginning, pressing and trading. And the norm of the trade was to add water to the cotton wool so that the weight goes up and the revenue goes up. My grandfather said that was cheating the customer. He would never do that. He would charge a higher price. So even honesty could be economically viable, as he proved.
Values have passed down generations in the Bajaj family. Values that today hold true for the new generation.
Simplicity is different generation by generation. So I can't claim to lead the simpler life that my father leads, and he didn't lead what his father and grandfather led. But clearly, we grow up in surroundings, we went to school where most of the other students were children of our own employees, whether managers or workers. We grew up in that atmosphere, and we thoroughly enjoyed ourselves. But we grew up in very simple atmosphere. Today my children do the same. They go to our school, which is 5-10 minutes away from here, and most of the children there come from all the nearby companies, and most of them end up being middle class. And I think that's a great way to build up kids. They don't get exposed to the high life that we see not only in Mumbai but even in Pune city. So simplicity is extremely important as well.
Hence, with these sets of values started a series of firsts, and a legend was born, the Bajaj Legend. Today, the Bajaj Group is amongst the top 10 business houses in India. Its footprint stretches across a wide range of industries spanning automobiles, home appliances, lighting, iron and steel, insurance, travel and finance. Over the last decade, the company has successfully changed its image from a scooter manufacturer to a two-wheeler manufacturer. It is today associated with international brands such as Kawasaki and KTM.
Tell us about your journey from Wardha to Boston. You were one of the first few Indians to be at Harvard Business School. How was it learning there, and what values did you bring back? What learnings did you bring back?
I shifted from Mumbai from Wardha when I was about 7-8 years old. So I have vivid memories. But not unfortunately of my grandfather. I remember him, but one or two occasions I remember, nothing else. Because I was less than 4 years old when he died. But by the time I shifted to Mumbai, I was 7-8, and I remember going to a school there. But more than that, I remember clearly going to Vinod Ashram in Paunar and working in a well and things like that. And I think that in its own way, sometimes as a child you don't realize that, but it impacts your mind, it impacts your thinking. The living, the simple living, our homes, kind of homes we had, kind of clothes we wore. Till I was 18, I think, or 20, I wore nothing but khadi, of course. My parents, till they died, they wore khadi, like yours did, I think. Mumbai, I think, was not anything special. It was like anyone from a business family would do. I went to cathedral, so that was excellent. I enjoyed it very much. I became, normally, we passed out senior Cambridge, class of 11, and you had prefects and house captains only normally at that time, at least class standard 11. I became a prefect. I was the only one who became a prefect standard 10. So, and I used to always come first in my class. So
leadership was in your blood always.
So I don't know, people were surprised, and you see what I was a boxing captain and a table tennis captain of the school, boxing champion and table tennis champion. And I was also coming first. Now first, if you come, you are a bookworm. You cannot be a sportsman. But you are a prefect, and in the final year, 11th, I was of course a prefect. I was a house captain, my green house, Savage House, and coming first. So that was, obviously I was very happy because everybody looked up to you, and you had everything in school. And then you went to St. Stephen's, and then you were ragged. So that always happens. You come out to the school, and especially anybody, but especially you are the top of your class in almost every respect.
The easy
and here
target
you are
then.
the junior most, and of course my ranking was luckily not at all serious, but you started at the bottom, and school was normal. I learnt a great deal. I think Cathedral was it was a convent school, but you learnt a lot. You learned to debate, you learned to have public speaking and various things like that, extracurricular activities. St. Steve, but there of course you were like any school, you are all 100% there. St. Stephen's 100% attendance, but lots of, I would say, masti, बहुत मस्ती होती थी, बहुत मस्ती होती थी. So यहाँ first आते थे class में, वहाँ कभी first.
So what was more useful, coming first in Cathedral or masti in Stevens?
I think both are very important, but that gives you tremendous this. You are the top. Your peer acclaim is the best thing, better than food, better than this. Sometimes you can say better than sex. You know, peer acclaim is what a lot of people live for, at least I live for. At the age of 24, then I went to business school. If there are 1,000 classes, there were 1,000 classes, all case method, I attended 999. Nothing great, you have to. One I had to miss because there was no way. I had to get my driving license, and they said you have to come at this time. So went and got my driving license, I missed one class, I still remember, others, all the classes. Learned a great deal, case method of instruction anywhere good, and Harvard is the best for case method of instruction even otherwise. So, your ability to analyze, your ability to decide, once you know you are still in a classroom, it's still like simulation. There's no substitute for real life.
Now, when you came back from Boston, after your training, you took charge at Bajaj Auto. How were the early days? What were the immediate tasks that you had to handle? How did you build the business?
That time also people asked, and afterwards people asked. I joined here, the official date is, I came here end of 64, but official date is 1st January 65. I took charge only in April 68. From then I was the CEO by different names called. First there was managing agency, then managing director. When my father died, I became chairman and managing director. But the CEO, I was only from April 68.
Okay.
But people ask, what about the business school, Harvard Business School, MBA? How did you apply that? What did you apply? And it's a very disappointing reply that I give them. I said, I applied nothing. Nothing at all. I came, there were top people there working. I worked with them, settled down. I'd been away from India for 2 years, but that didn't make much difference. I picked that up pretty soon with the newspapers and magazines. And then we picked up the work in the company.
Tell us, how did Cheetah become the legend that it did?
It's not that in marketing you learn this and you do that here. Conditions were very different in India. The size of the company was nothing. It was just starting. No, Cheetah was the thing, you see, from 68 when I became CEO, I just said, what should I do with this company? What should I do? And in brief again, I came to the view that that was socialism at its highest. In fact, highest became in, one could say in 69, when Indira Ji started her Garibi Hatao slogan, and MRTP Act came in, etc., MRTP Commission. So you couldn't make more. You had a license capacity. You were allowed to make 25% more than license capacity, that's all. And not easy to cross that because your import licenses, etc., I won't have time to go into that, depended on that. So what do you do? So I said to myself, I want volumes. From day one I said, I want volumes. Nothing special in that. Everybody wants volumes. And to get volumes, you need cost and quality. If your cost is too high, nobody is going to buy your product. If your quality is bad, nobody. Sure. And they are related, all are related. We didn't talk technology at that time because it was all imported anyway. We were importing CKDs, which was going down gradually. So the idea was also to reduce cost and dependence on foreigners, on Vespa people in Italy, Piaggio and company. We wanted 100% local content, which I don't remember, but I think by 1970 we had achieved 100% local content, which started with only 26% or 30% to begin with, but then we reached that, we made it, and that time we used to make many more things, much less with vendors. Today most of it is with vendors, very little you do yourself, barring painting, assembly and things like that. So with that idea, I just said, that's what I want, volume. Because I said to myself, if I don't get volume in any time, but especially in those times in India, when you are not allowed to grow as a large house, then now you can't do anything else. You can't spend on advertising, you can't spend on R&D. That's why I was the first one who started advertising in Time magazine.
70s, 80s were dominated by Chetak, and I think the Bajaj scooter became a
North
generic.
India, half the marriages were with a...
Yes, that was a dowry.
Chetak, the bridegroom had to get...
How did things change post-liberalization? I mean, do you see the period of 70s, 80s as being drastically different with new set of challenges of the 90s?
Not of course India changed, as it should have changed. We were all shouting for liberalization, and in the early 60s, India, barring the Europeans and the Americans and the Canadians, maybe Australians, we were economically as developed as any other country in Asia, Africa and Latin America other than Japan. Asia, Africa and Latin America in the beginning of 60s. Where are we even today, leave alone in 1991 when liberalization started? We are nowhere as compared to many Southeast Asian countries. We are nowhere in comparison to the Far East, that is Taiwan and South Korea. We are nowhere in comparison to China. We can't even say population. They have more population than us. So the only difference is democracy and absence of democracy there, but still we have ourselves to blame. Till 91, for the stupid socialism we followed. There was nothing wrong with that idea. Socialism to me means maximum good of the maximum people. Who can disagree with that? But the implementation, this was the idea of Jawaharlal. That is good. But it was implemented by half of them corrupt politicians dealing with half corrupt industrialists. And then they made the bureaucracy half corrupt.
The model had to change. It was
Because the
not
implementation was
sustainable.
wrong.
Agreed.
You created shortage economies, you created black market, you created licensing. The discretion was on with the government to give licenses, preempt, somebody would preempt licenses. There are industrial houses known for that, preempting the licenses to others.
Rahul Bajaj is said to have adored the famous Vespa scooters made by Piaggio of Italy. And in 1960, at a young age of 22, he became the Indian licensee for Vespa. Bajaj Auto began producing its first two-wheelers the next year. It was with the entry into the two-wheeler market that the Bajaj brand found its groove. The Bajaj name was no longer a mere surname. It had caught the fancy of the Indian middle class. It was Hamara Bajaj, a brand that an average Indian could associate with pride.
For 25 years, Cheetah ruled the roost, was the king of the road. Now, a model doesn't last for more than 5-6 years. So, you got to be ahead of technology.
The Cheetah, named after the legendary horse of Indian warrior Rana Pratap and styled on the Vespa Sprint, was soon to become an affordable means of transportation for millions of Indian families, and would one day go on to inspire the world's cheapest car, the Tata Nano. The Bajaj dominance was first challenged in the 1980s with Japanese mega brands entering the two-wheeler market. It was time to face the challenge. Time was to re-emerge with a new identity. It was time to change.
I was asking you, when the business changed, when the economic landscape changed, how did Bajaj change itself? What are the steps you took to orient
That
Bajaj?
change came really from 91 for India as a whole, but the auto industry started changing from mid-80s. Partly because earlier Maruti came in because of Sanjay Gandhi, then those 4 LCV walas were allowed, Mazda and Toyota, Nissan, and there were 4 of them were allowed, and then the two-wheeler walas were allowed. And the Vespas and the Hondas, who were all banned earlier, were all allowed. Yamaha and everybody came in, Suzuki and all that. So, of course, that brought in motorcycles. The scooters didn't come, barring with Vespa brought in the scooter, and Honda brought separate companies too. But what really succeeded was the motorcycle, let's face it. If you take the entire period from 85, 86 till today, barring off and on, yes, the motorcycle succeeded initially with a company which brought in the 4-stroke. The rest were all by chance. All of them were 2-stroke by chance. It was, I think, partly luck that one company had 4-stroke and which gave the better fuel economy and succeeded. I think what happened was, with these new motorcycles, better fuel economy, the market by end of 90s, you see, no change took place till 97, 98. These all foreign two-wheeler malas came in from mid-80s. My Kawasaki collaboration came in 85, 86. Kinetic Honda came in, Hero Honda came in, TVS Suzuki came in.
Yeah, late 90s, I think everybody had established their options.
So that was all there, and it took time then, and so scooters were still king of the road, and motorcycles came up and all that. But it's only suddenly, I think, from 98, 99 till 2001 that India changed from being a scooter market to a motorbike market. Obviously, it doesn't happen overnight. One could have perhaps seen it, etc., etc. And so those who made only motorcycles obviously benefited, and good luck to them. And those who made only scooters didn't do that well. And those like us who made both, but it was 90% scooters and three-wheelers and very little motorbikes. So didn't do that well.
Tell me, when you passed the baton to Rajiv and Sanjeev, who joined you in early 2000, what were the values, what were the messages that you gave them, what were the learnings that they took from you, which according to you they still carry forward in the company?
That you'll have to ask them, unfortunately or fortunately, because in their youth they were brought up by their mother. And this is one of my regrets, that I didn't spend enough time with my children, which I try to make up by spending time with my grandchildren. So I didn't spend time with them, it's a fact. And there's no justification for that. Standard excuse of everybody is, I'm busy, I'm traveling. But my sons and my son-in-law, I see how they are spending time with their children. It's not that they don't work. You have to make up your mind and spend some time less somewhere else. We're only 24 hours in a day. So they do that, and I think that's very, very commendable. I couldn't do that, so, but you see, the family was there. Of course, they saw me work. They could see that I was considered a workaholic, and they could see that. And of course, they also read about Jamnalalji and this. I think just as it imbibed in me, of course, as you go down the generations, probably gets a little less. I couldn't imbibe what my father and uncle imbibed. So they perhaps may not have imbibed what I did imbibe. But I'm very happy to say, on ethical dealings in business, both of them are as strong as I am. There would have been a major issue and a problem, and I would have been very unhappy if that was not the case. So that's no issue at all. But yes, I find Rajiv, for example, I think he's very soft inside, but he doesn't show it. And he comes out to employees, I believe, because he doesn't meet too many people. So he has a small group. Whereas I was open. My rooms were always open. Anybody could come in. So that's why people now, of course, those people have all gone now. Everybody's gone now, retired, and then VRS and all that. But I would deal with employees in a particular way. I'm not saying a better way, a particular way. And Rajiv deals with them in a different way. You know, we kept 2,000 people outside. You know, it was a major issue 3 years ago. I may have done it in a different way. The decision to reduce the number of people and maybe stop production in Akodi, which was a very major decision, unheard of in Indian industry. Has anybody ever in India, ever anywhere, kept 2,000 people, paying them full wages, kept at home and saying, I'll keep paying till you retire? 100 people, 50 people, maybe. Not a single
But
case.
you supported him in the decision.
Of course I supported him, because the objective was good. In fact, when we met once Sharad Pawar, the first day when I took him to meet Sharad Pawar in Delhi, he told him, this decision I took without telling the chairman, because I knew that he may not have approved of it. But having said that, that does bring in issues of corporate governance. What decisions can the CEO, he is the CEO, I am a non-executive chairman, let's take it as that, de facto. But what decisions can the CEO, of course in consultation with his team, but they are subservient to him, can take without consulting his peers or superiors, which essentially means the chairman and the board. Any issue, this was just one example. So those issues will have to be tackled in any good company. No one man, no CEO alone in the world today is expected to or allowed to run a company. That's not, which I have allowed him to do for the last many years.
Tell me, through the 4 generations, from your grandfather now to your sons, which values have remained ingrained in the way business is done at Bajaj, and what has changed? How have you blended the tradition with the modernity?
Integrity, honesty, ethics can have many facets. Philanthropy is one facet. Not cheating anybody is not philanthropy, but that's essential part of integrity. Being fair to your stakeholders in a company, of course customers, of course employees, of course shareholders, of course vendors, and the society as a whole. This is part of any good management and can be called, it's not charity, it's not philanthropy, it's corporate governance at the most, or any good management will do that. So times are tremendously different. I don't think we can compare the late 30s, my grandfather was around, and this decade, there's no comparison. Size of industry, complexity of industry, the way the world works. That time you working for freedom struggle. There's a particular objective. Today you are working for India to become independent economically. The poverty should be banished. Kind of the schooling and health of a child should not be dependent on his parental income. That because of that I can't do that. My auto rickshaw driver, I met him once, he told me 10 years ago, Sahab, I send my child to a private school. I said, it's very expensive. He said, yes sir, but government school has no teaching. And this takes away from my two children 70% of my income. But I don't want my child to be an auto rickshaw driver, though I am one. I want him to be an engineer and a doctor.
The stage was set for entry of the next generation of Bajajs. Rahul Bajaj handed over the reins of Bajaj Auto to his son, Rajiv. Bajaj Auto was witnessing tough competition and scooter sales were constantly on the decline. Rajiv Bajaj tried a whole new strategy to take on this competition, a strategy that seems to be paying off today. And all this while his younger brother Sanjeev was working to improve the company's supply chain management.
I first did my engineering in Pune from the Government College of Engineering, and through that process I actually trained for a year at Tata Motors. And then I was in training in Bajaj Auto before I did my Masters in Engineering from the University of Warwick in England. I then came back and I was here a year and a half before I went to Harvard. So by the time I came back from Harvard, I had spent enough time in the manufacturing industry in Bajaj Auto to know that is what I wanted to do. So the answer is that yes, I knew this is what I wanted to do for sure.
Rajiv, Sanjeev are hands-on people. They are thorough professionals who are determined to lead their country to higher levels of progress and prosperity. I would think that the kind of social work is something which they will do later in life, I believe. They are just now bent upon focusing on understanding the ropes. It was a very smooth transition where the old order gave way to the new order in terms of the next generation.
The increasing competition in the market did shake them a little, but after a lot of ups and downs, the Bajaj flag was flying high. A new confidence and a new ad campaign reiterated the group's dominance.
When we realized scooter sales were falling, motorcycle sales were picking up, we had some motorcycle models in our stable, but we were the leaders of scooters, as you said. And when we realized it, normally all this change has to be driven top down. And that's how it was driven. People down the line did not have a problem whether it was making or selling or servicing a scooter or a motorcycle. The problem was at the top. And at the top, I mean all of us as a top team, we were the ones who didn't see that change or didn't think of it as coming up as fast as it did actually, the change from scooters to motorcycles. But once the top team was aligned, we were able to move very rapidly towards aligning ourselves.
And while the winds of change were blowing at Bajaj, many things still remained the same. The flag of Jamnalalji's legacy is still fluttering proudly. Steeped in tradition, poised for change, blending the old values with the nimbleness of youth, Bajaj is rediscovering itself every day, preparing itself for the future.
Looking ahead, you are a great visionary. How do you see Bajaj Group, whether it's Bajaj Auto, Bajaj Finserv, Bajaj Holding, now readying themselves for the future challenges? How do you see this group 10 years down the line?
You see, last couple of years to Bajaj Auto, there's been a little bit of a setback for various reasons, not only the global meltdown, and it's not luckily very much, but slight effect on India, but various other reasons. Some of our new models did not find the kind of acceptance by the customers as we wanted. But I'm not going to those details. I think in the coming, say, 5 to 7 years, what we are aiming in the Bajaj Auto Group, let me put it this way, and I mentioned this earlier, in 4 objectives. To remain and become a leading two-wheeler player, today it sounds like motorcycles, but a two-wheeler player in India, and to try to reach a market share of 40%, which is not easy at all today, with the major competitor itself being over 50%. So 35 to 40%, 35 minimum, 40%. That's what. Second, to take this group global. And we would like in the same period of time to gain 5% global market share. Sri Lanka, we sold over 100,000 vehicles.
It's a very strong, Bajaj is an extremely strong brand in Sri Lanka.
Colombia,
yes.
Latin America, far away from here, shipping costs, language, we sold 100,000 vehicles. The Bajaj motorcycle is the #1 brand, above Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki. Third, I come to the financial sector. In general, of course, but also for our business. So we finance these vehicles. We provide our customers with the wherewithal to be able to buy them if we cannot put, say, a 40, 50 or 60,000 rupees on the table. You see, BAFL also went through a little difficult phase, but for very different reasons to Bajaj Auto. Partly because Bajaj Auto sales fell down, but partly for its other things, we had a change in management in between. And at that time, there was a period of a year or two when sort of in a way nobody was in charge properly. There was some people in charge, but not properly. So since now Sanjeev and a new CEO who took over 2 years ago, Rajiv Jain, taken over, the company has completely been transformed in many, many respects. And the fourth, of course, is to provide safety to India, to insure India. Both insurance company joint ventures, life and general insurance. And of course, in a limited way to insure our products.
4 wheels from Bajaj.
4-wheel is something which is completely the baby of Rajiv, who's the managing director, and his team. I'm not involved in that. You know, we signed a MOU long time ago with Renault and Nissan, etc., etc. And I think what they are working on is the product. What is this product? If there are 12 companies making 40 models of cars in India, from Nano to Indigo to Maruti 800 to Hyundai to everything under the sun, you still have to ensure, in spite of that, that you will make a 4-wheeler which will sell how many? May not be 1 million, but with the rising demand in India of all vehicles now, at least a couple of 100,000 a year. Unless you make 200,000 a year, why you venture into that business at all? And with a profit, maybe a small profit.
Bajaj believes successful companies are the ones that integrate their business practices with employee welfare. Companies which give equal importance to their financial goals and their social responsibilities.
Jamnalal ji had told us that wherever you have activity, business activity, you must do some social work in terms of rural development or community service or whatever it is. In Bajaj Auto, we have a social wing called the Janki Devi Bajaj Gram Vikas Sanstha, under which we are working in 42 villages at present. The idea is to have a model village, which means an integrated development.
Changing tacks a little bit, tell us about Mr. Rahul Bajaj, the MP, vis-a-vis Mr. Rahul Bajaj, the businessman.
No, Mr. Rahul Bajaj, the MP is, as I've said before, is not a politician. Yes, he has become more in public life because he's got a platform to speak within and without the Raj Sabha. And I think what he does there, you have to ask my colleagues in the Raj Sabha. It's not proper for me to say. But what I can say is, I don't think, there are many small businessmen who are politicians, but you take the top 50 houses, in the last 20 years, I don't think there's been a single industrialist in top 50 houses who has been anywhere near as regular in attendance as I've been, morning and the afternoon. Nobody. There have been others, I won't name them, there have been others, not too many. At any one time, not more than one or two. In Rajya Sabha, I remember one in the last 5, 7, 10 years, or two at the most. So I've been much more regular, much more sincere. The others, they came in for their businesses. Now I openly say, I'm a businessman. I was born one, I'll die one, I'll live one. I'm not a politician. I represent the view. Every time I speak, I am making it clear, I represent the view of Indian industry. I speak for Indian industry, never for Bajaj Auto. एक बार कोई वो एक दो लोगों ने गलत समझा वहाँ पर, they apologized afterwards to me. But media said it, Rahul Bajaj spoke on his vehicles or something. Never. It was only, it was a misunderstanding. But of course I speak for industry. Of course I speak for India and the Indian people. And so I enjoyed. I enjoyed tremendously. I have learnt a lot. And it was a combination of, it was fortuitous circumstances which brought me to the Rajya Sabha. You see, in Rajya Sabha especially, you see, Lok Sabha, if you want to fight an election and if you are somebody, almost any party will give you a ticket. Because you have to spend your own money, you are an industrialist, you spend your own money. If you have some chance of winning, they will give you a ticket. You may or may not win, because you have to do a lot of work and spend a lot of money. But to come to Rajya Sabha is very easy. Once a party or combination of parties decides to bring you. So they will only bring you if you are a party man. They don't bring anybody else. And BJP and Congress will not do that. Good parties, NCP will not do that. I won't name parties, there are some parties. Communists will not do that. CPI, CPM will only give it to their cadres. But there are a couple of smaller regional parties who will do it for money, which I would of course not even dream of doing. I will not pay a penny for anything else, or getting a license, leave alone for coming to the Rajya Sabha. The Rajya is willing to do that.
You were associated closely with my grandfather. In fact, when he passed away, you were the first person to visit our home. Do you have any memories of your association with him? How do you remember him?
You see, both your grandfather and your grandfather's elder brother obviously have very, very close and fond memories, though we had some of our differences also, which are very well known, both with Naval Malji and Hasti Malji. And I think they were both as different from each other as Kamalji was from Ramakrishnaji. I think Naval Malji was much more of an entrepreneur. Hasti Malji, as I saw him, was much more of a professional. Of course, he was an engineer, but that's not that important. And much more than that, I think my reading for both Ramakrishnaji and Hasti Malji, and I may be wrong, right, you may or may not agree, they were Lakshmans to their elder brothers.
Times they are a-changing at Bajaj. It's a group on the move, a group grounded in reality. Yet aiming for the skies, soaring to conquer. Bajaj is poised for exciting times ahead.